Well, Utah is the big winner in the Pac-12 after Week 8, and they're reminding us of something once again.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon-to-be mostly team-free, but until then, beloved and loaded Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Prize Picks, the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. So it is time for what is always one of my favorite recurring segments on the show. We only do it during football season. Winners and losers. My assessment of what I believe, not necessarily what the mood actually is, but what I believe the mood should be for each fan base coming off of the result that they obtained in the previous slate of games. So only 4 games over the weekend. So a good number of teams have got the no vibe in the buy department, but Utah is the big winner. Of course, Utah is the big winner. They're the only outright winner this week. That much is pretty clear and obvious based on the results that we saw. But Utah is reminding us of something, and that's that they never needed to be flashy to win. It's never been an essential part of what they do. In 2019, and in 2018, when they made back-to-back Pac-12 championship games and lost them both, the problem is they didn't get enough offense. At the half to Oregon in 2019, they were down 20-0, and Washington beat them in 2018. I don't remember the score of that particular game, but the defense has always been there. The run game, always kind of been there. They've always won in the trenches with good coaching, well prepared, well coached, not making big mistakes. That much has always been present. The next step for them came in 2021 when Cam Rising emerged as the starter later in the year, mind you, because he wasn't named the starter initially because Kyle Whittingham and his staff, look, it's not like they don't know anything about offense, but do they have as good of a feel for it as, say, Washington staff, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb? The answer to that is clearly no. But once they figured that out, they were then getting enough from their quarterback position, more than enough. And Cam Rising's a good quarterback. Cam Rising is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He could be a backup. He could be a third stringer. He could be a wildcat guy here and there. He could definitely be that sort of player. But the success of Utah's program has never been predicated on having a great dynamic quarterback. Cam Rising helped get them closer to the next level. Is it something they need to play at a national championship kind of level, college football playoff kind of level? Yeah, I think so. They don't need to be at Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams sort of level. They don't need to be Shedeur Sanders when he's rolling. They need like DJ Uiagalelei, okay? They need good, and that's what Cam Rising is. He is a really good college quarterback. And so you put Bryson Barnes into this equation, and what you have come up with here is not Cameron Rising. No, absolutely not. But he's probably 65% of Cam Rising. I mean, Bryson Barnes went for 235 and 3 touchdowns. He did throw a pick 6. That's something Cam Rising does not do very often. But when you look at the throws that he made and the way the Utah offense operated, running the football for well over 200 yards, lining up in the Wildcat, quarterback runs on 4th and short, Bryson Barnes can do a lot of the things that Cam Rising can. Cam is more consistent. He's slightly more explosive. But from an arm talent and athletic standpoint, there isn't a lot that I see that Bryson Barnes can't do that Cam Rising can do. Cam just does it at a slightly higher level with a bit more consistency. But the reason that Utah is right back in the thick of the Pac-12 championship hunt after this big win against USC, and why they're right back in the mix to make the college football playoff, even though their quarterback play is just okay. It's fine. It's solid. It's decent. It's respectable, but it's nothing elite in the best quarterback conference in America, is because of everything else. It is because of everything else. And that is what Utah reminded us of on Saturday is their success has never been predicated on having elite quarterback play. It helps them play at a higher level. Absolutely. It's never been the foundation of what has made them a top-tier program. Has never been, probably will never be. That's what Kyle Whittingham does, and he wins a lot of football games and won a big one. So Utah, the outright winner, the only outright winner from Saturday. Couple of teams that took an L over the weekend that I have in the lean win department here. Let's start with them. Arizona State. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Did anyone have on their bingo card? I got a funny tweet from a Washington fan saying, hey, in your Pac-12 prime picks, stop picking Washington to cover. I don't know that I'm going to do that. I'm thinking about picking them to cover again this week. Because every time I pick Washington to cover, yeah, they don't, and they play a game that is much closer than Husky fans would like. I think that's just been coincidence to this point. So, when you look at Arizona State and what they did on Saturday, looking at it and saying, hey, we're potentially one bad call away from winning the football game. There were a lot of bad calls in that game. One in particular at a crucial moment that was worse than them all because they threw the flag and then picked it up. Egregious. Absolutely egregious. Washington, as a good team does, takes advantage and says, all right, you're in a fourth down, come at us. They're sitting on the route, pick six. Offense had nothing, absolutely nothing all game. This is the most explosive pass offense in the country. And Arizona State just went toe-to-toe with them all night long. What a fantastic effort. Arizona State's not going to win a lot of football games this year. Heck, they'd be lucky to get 3. I could see them only winning 1. Feels like they might be able to get 2, but they've also let some key opportunities go by the wayside. So I don't know. It's going to be tough for them. But what Kenny Dillingham is doing is establishing a culture, and he's talked very openly about that. It's not the result he wanted. It's not the results week over week that he wants, but they're competitive. They are competitive in football games quite often, and that is a really good thing. And this was an outstanding performance from Arizona State. They are absolutely a lean win here. And the sky is not falling for Washington. Everybody's got games like this every season where they're playing. Look at Georgia last year on the road against Missouri. Why was that game close? College football, you play the games on the field, not on paper. Sometimes matchups and bad days and everything like that. And Oregon and Washington, both, Washington more so for sure, suffered emotional letdowns after the big fight last week in Seattle that was just an outstanding football game across the board. That's what they were suffering from, a little bit of emotional hangover, and Arizona State came ready to play. That defense, Brian Ward, he's good. He's got some players. They can create havoc. They were pressuring Michael Penix, who had his worst game of the season, by far. So ASU a lean win. Washington State. Washington State went on the road, played my Oregon Ducks, and look, by the end of the game, Oregon was in control. That's because Oregon has a much more talented roster. Washington State got off to a great start, but there's one thing in particular that makes this a lean win for me for Washington State. I know they've lost 3 in a row, and Cougs fans up in Pullman, vibes are not high right now. I think wins are about to start to add up for Washington State because they did something really, really important against Oregon, and that's get Cam Ward going again. Back-to-back games under 200 yards. 1 on the road, 1 at home. You go on the road against a good defense, hostile environment, motivated football team, really good football team in Oregon, and you go in there and throw for 438 yards and don't turn the football over? I know it's not the result Washington State was perhaps hoping for. I think the wins are going to start to add up. I will not be surprised. Keep your eye on this. They still can't run the football. I will not be surprised one bit, not one single bit, if Washington State is ranked when the Apple Cup comes around. Will not be surprised. Just watch for it. They got 5 games left. They're going to be favored in each of their next 4. Just saying to watch for it. Someone else is a lean win this week that should be feeling good after, an actual win. A lot of game-changing moments over the week. A lot of game-changing moments over the weekend, much like Athletic Brewing has changed the non-alcoholic beer game, much like Bryson Barnes had the game-changing play on a quarterback scramble to set up the game-winning field goal for Utah on the road against USC. That is your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Athletic Brewing Company is making non-alcoholic beer that actually tastes good. I know, what a concept. They're great tasting, award-winning, and they beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They're fit for all times as well. So you drink them anytime, anywhere. Make any activity more enjoyable with a delicious tasting Athletic brew. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers, use code LOCKEDON, get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Alrighty, got my second segment sip. UCLA is a lean win this week. Did I expect them to win against Stanford? I did. Thought the Cardinal could hang around and cover. Not all that surprised that I was wrong, because I'm under 500 again for the year. Looking for a bounce back this week. We'll see. But UCLA this week puts Ethan Garbers into the game for Dante Moore at quarterback. He throws for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. The offense rolls, and the defense is still great. This is the best Chip Kelly defense he's ever had in his entire college career. That includes his 4 years at Oregon, where they had some defenses that were better than you'd think. This is the best one he's had by far. Laiatu Latu, the Murphy brothers. You look at the way the back end of that defense plays, they have absolute dudes up and down, all 3 levels, playmakers, speed, power, tenacity. Situationally, they're good. It has been a revelation this year that UCLA's defense is this good. And it just came 1 year too late. If this defense were there a season ago playing at this level, UCLA probably makes the Pac-12 championship game. It's unfortunate timing for the Bruins, but you have to feel good about what Chip Kelly is doing right now if you're a UCLA fan. So the Bruins are inside the top 25 at number 24. They're 5-2. They're 5-2, and Dante Moore, each of the previous 3 weeks, 2 of which were losses, threw a pick 6. Ethan Garbers comes in, protects the football. And yes, it was Stanford, sure. But Dante Moore turned it over kind of all season long. And Ethan Garbers had that offense moving and operating in a way that a good offense should against a team like Stanford on the road, where we have seen a good team like Arizona struggle this season. So I think that for UCLA, that was a really encouraging sign. They have a favorable schedule. Their only ranked opponent left is UCLA. Now, they have to go at Arizona. That is a tough game. We know not to sleep on Arizona State, though I think UCLA at home will be fine there. They have to play Cal. I think that could be a tougher game than some people think. But this is a very favorable final 5 games. And the Bruins are just sitting there at 5-2. And the possibility of going 9-3, pretty available. And if you told me right now UCLA ends the year 10-2, I wouldn't say I'm utterly shocked. I don't think that's going to happen, but this is still a good UCLA team, capable of getting to the Pac-12 championship game. Not a guarantee, but the path is there, because if they can just protect the football at the quarterback position and operate effectively, they don't have to be explosive. They're like Utah, a team who, by the way, with Dante Moore, they played to a 14-7 loss in Salt Lake City. A pretty impressive result as the season goes on. If they just protect the football, they might win that game. And if Ethan Garbers can bring that consistently, watch out for UCLA. So they're a lean win this week. A lot of no vibes. No vibe for Colorado, Arizona, Cal, Oregon State. Why? They're all on a bye. They all play this week. Colorado plays UCLA. Arizona and Oregon State play. Sneaky best game of the week. Oregon, Utah. College GameDay. Second time in the last 3 weeks the Pac-12 has had College GameDay, and the third time overall this season. But sneaky best game of the week is Oregon State at Arizona. Fascinating game. Cal plays USC this week, coming off a bye at home as a 10-point underdog. Only a 10-point dog. Tough times for USC. I'll talk about them in just a moment. So no vibe there. Oregon and Stanford. No vibe. Oregon played a fine game against Washington State. Wasn't great. Wasn't terrible. They won by multiple possessions. That's what should happen. They're at home. They're the more talented team. Had a little bit of a sluggish start. I think an emotional letdown of sorts that faded once Washington State had a 10-3 lead. From that point on, Oregon went on a 35-6 spurt and led 38-16 before Washington State scored the touchdown with less than a minute to go for a backdoor cover. Tough times for the Pac-12 prime picks, but that's why there's another week. Stanford as well. I have no expectations for Stanford. They already had their highlight moment of the year. Could be their last win. And guess what? It could still be a successful season because you've seen that Troy Taylor knows how to coach. You've seen that Troy Taylor can do some good things, just needs time to build up the roster, and I think he can. Lean lose. The lean lose department has just one occupant. That's the Washington Huskies. They won the football game. That's the only good news that you can, use to describe what happened on Saturday night. I thought it was going in the other direction. I thought this was full steam ahead. I thought it was keep the train rolling along. Nope. They just played a bad football game. Could have, some down in Tempe would say, should have lost the game. The good news for Washington, they're 7-0, unbeaten, going on the road against Stanford this week. And that's a game that, has ASU vibes. I think Washington will be just fine. Again, not trying to jinx them here, just saying what I think, which is I think Washington will be just fine this week. They were not just fine on Saturday night. The mark of a great team is don't play well and still get a win. Well, they played about as bad of a football game offensively as you could imagine. Michael Penix was under a lot of pressure, and he was not able to execute the way that he has all season long and had a really awful, terrible, no good, very bad game. No offensive touchdowns. If you say just at the outset, Washington has a game where they don't score an offensive touchdown, what do you think? Oh, Huskies lose. Huskies lose. And a lot of times they would. But that defense that I've talked about here on the show, better than people think. I think that defense is a little bit better than people think. Not saying it's great. It definitely is not. It is better than people will give it credit for, and they showed that on Saturday night. Outright losers this week. The Pac-12 prime picks. I missed all 4 games. I thought USC would win in a bounce back. Nope. Thought Washington would win big. Nope. Oregon, backdoor cover with 56 seconds to go. Otherwise, I had that one kind of nailed, but the Cougs sneak right in the back door and make it an incorrect pick. And then I thought Stanford could hang around a little. Nope. UCLA's defense is dominant. Only redeeming quality, much like Washington winning the game, was I said, hey, I think this UCLA-Stanford game is going under 53.5. It did, 42-7, the final for the Bruins. But that's an outright loser. And then we get to USC. So let's talk about USC, the only outright loser of the week. 2 losses in a row. Defense allowed way too many yards to Bryson Barnes at home after a 48-20 loss the week prior. College football playoff hopes are done. Everything feels like it is in disarray. It's definitely not great and is going to be a test of the culture Lincoln Riley has established in his, about year and a half now in Los Angeles at this point in time, because when you look at what USC has done the last couple of weeks, nothing's going right. Nothing is good right now. Caleb Williams is playing some really bad football, particularly against Notre Dame. He was fine. Made some clutch plays, which is why there's still a glimmer of hope, I guess, to win the Pac-12 for USC, is that Caleb Williams is amazing. He can be in the clutch moments. He just goes out there, finds a way to make a play. He went down, did his job, trailed 28-14 at home, went and brought his team back to take the lead late in the game, and the defense couldn't stop Bryson Barnes and the Utah Utes offense. And so this is, it's just a weird thing to see with USC at some level, but here's something that makes even less sense to me, but also affirms what I already knew. Alex Grinch is not a good defensive coordinator. We know that. Here's one thing that I noticed on Saturday night watching that Utah game. Why does Alex Grinch's defense always look confused? How many times can you have guys that are jumping around, trying to get the signs in, not sure where they're supposed to be? They're completely thrown off by motion. Anytime there's motion, there's just a massive shift and it opens up a big hole. Nothing about that. They're not disciplined. They had key personal foul or roughing the passer penalties. Bear Alexander had 2 of them. Like, nothing about them is right now defensively. And nothing about them is right in the larger context of the season. And so the question for USC is, what do you do now? What do you do now? And there is a suggestion out there with regards to Caleb Williams that I think is, shall we say, an egregious proposition and one I cannot get behind and need to call out because it's apparently being, at least by one major media personality, it's being suggested. I'm suggesting you go to Prize Picks, which is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players and pros and sharks, you just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player prop projections in the course of a game, and then you watch the winnings roll in. It's easy. So quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. So here's the suggestion that came from Emmanuel Lacho, who I'm not particularly a big fan of. It is, however, a perspective. I don't think it has a 0% chance of materializing. And I mentioned it on Saturday nights / early Sunday mornings, late reaction show. Caleb Williams is going to be the #1 or #2, but probably the #1 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. I know a lot of people on Twitter and YouTube will tell you that he's terrible, no good, very bad. Look at these decisions. He's awful. They're not going to take him. He's a mess and everything and all that sort of stuff. And he's got a bad track record playing ranked opponents. I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter to the NFL. Josh Allen went in the top 10. Justin Herbert did not have gaudy college numbers from a completion percentage standpoint. I think he was like 59% as a senior. Like that sort of stuff is irrelevant. So Emmanuel Acho suggested that Caleb Williams should sit out the rest of the season now that the national championship is out of the reach for USC, which he's right about. It is out of the reach for USC. They cannot win it in 2023. That's spoken like a guy who makes a lot more money on the NFL than college football. And I don't believe that Caleb Williams is going to do this, but it would be seemingly a final gut punch to the USC locker room situation. Like, how high can the vibes be? Lincoln Riley's not having players come out and talk to the media. 2 losses in a row. Defense gives up, what was it, over 400 yards to Bryson Barnes in Utah. They can't stop the run. Nothing's going right. It can't be a great vibe inside that USC locker room. And if Caleb Williams were to come out and say, yeah, I'm just going to shut it down for the rest of the season, #1, terrible precedent. Absolutely god-awful, terrible precedent to set. I hope this gets absolutely positively no traction because I don't believe that treating college football as simply a feeder system for the NFL and nothing more goes against the very fiber of my being. And I think that take is most rooted in somebody who talks more about the NFL and for networks who would rather Caleb Williams be healthy and not risk injury going to the NFL. Now it's curious because he works for a network but again, they're fine with opinions and everything like that. And I think he personally makes more money talking about the NFL and wants to be able to talk about Caleb Williams because he's a polarizing player and he's a talented player. But Caleb Williams could still win the Pac-12 in 2023. And here's why this would be a mistake for him to go along with this notion, which his dad hasn't suggested, but has suggested in the past. Well, we won't go here or here. We'll just come back and play college for another year. Caleb Williams can still improve. Everybody can, forever and always. So that's why it would be a mistake, first of all. Second of all, the message that it sends to whichever NFL team wants to draft you, I don't think is a particularly good one. And third of all, Drake May is coming for that spot. I know he lost over the weekend at North Carolina as well in a shocker against Virginia. I could not believe that game. My goodness, I thought North Carolina was really good. Drake May is coming for that #1 spot. If Caleb Williams sits out, Drake May plays the rest of the year, you don't think that's going to change the perception in the NFL surrounding Caleb Williams? That is what could get him off of the #1 draft pick position if he goes, I'm just not going to play this year. And then the precedent that it would set for college football, horrible. Absolutely horrible. Bad message in locker rooms, bad message in the optics of the sport. I think everything about it is bad and negative, and I really hope that does not happen. So That's everything I've got on USC thoughts-wise right now. I know many of you have thoughts. If you have questions, by all means, send them in the mailbag, YouTube comments, or Twitter at Smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12. DMs and mentions are always wide open. But yeah, USC still plays Oregon, still plays Washington, still plays UCLA. I mean, would it surprise anyone if they lost all three of those football games? They're only a 10-point favorite against Cal this week. That should tell you what the betting markets think of USC right now. Like, the problems go beyond just the defense. The offensive line, the culture, the way Caleb Williams is playing, it is not where they were hoping it would be before the season. But anyway, back to the mailbag. This from the Missile 007. Going into the Civil War game, Oregon had the best chance of going to the Rose Bowl if they could beat Oregon State. This was last year. Washington needed to beat Washington State and have Oregon State win to go to the Rose Bowl. Oh, this was 2000. Sorry, this is in the year 2000. Oregon State needed to win and have Washington State win to go to the Rose Bowl. Could that happen this year, except instead of the Rose Bowl, Pac-12 championship berth? Note, Oregon State, led at quarterback by Jonathan Smith, beat Oregon, and Washington beat Washington State, which had Washington going to the Rose Bowl and Oregon State going to the Fiesta Bowl. So the short answer here is yes, but the tiebreakers are something that has been a subject on this show, at least last year. It certainly was, because of the way that the Pac-12 has ridiculous competitive balance at the top. And the top four right now are Washington, Oregon, Oregon State, and Utah. One of those teams, Oregon or Utah, will suffer their second conference loss of the season on Saturday afternoon at Rice-Eccles, where College GameDay will be. My theory before the season was that the Pac-12 was not going to make the playoff, even though it is the best and deepest conference in America, because there's too much depth, there's too much balance. You have a lot of great teams, but you don't have a dominant team. I have not wavered off of that prediction. When you look at Oregon, for example, they've been very impressive. They've already got the one loss, so they can't lose again. Utah on the road. USC can still score a lot of points, though I think the Ducks will be fine. Oregon State, good team. And then who are you playing in the Pac-12 title game? Have to go unbeaten there and avoid a stumble. Now, Washington avoided a potential stumble. They still have to play Utah. They still have to play at USC. And they have to play at Oregon State. And the Pac-12 championship game. Now, Washington could have one loss and get in. That's true. But are you telling me after Saturday night, and the way that they played the week prior against Oregon, it's completely out of the realm of possibility for Washington to lose two games down the stretch? I don't. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just thinking, what is possible? What is realistic? That is all there. So to bring this back to the tiebreakers question, we're set up to have it take place once again, because USC's got two losses, but one is to Notre Dame. So they only have one conference loss. So there are still five teams that can get to the Pac-12 championship game. And for the most part, they're all playing each other. They're all playing each other. You know, Utah has played USC. They've got to play Oregon. They've got to play Washington. They've got to play Oregon State. Oregon's got to play Oregon State. Already played Washington. Got to play Utah. Got to play USC. Washington got to play Utah. Got to play Oregon State. Got to play USC. Someone's got to go unbeaten in that stretch, and it's going to set up that sort of chaotic tiebreaker scenario that existed back in 2000 with regards to who goes to the Rose Bowl, but set up for the Pac-12 championship game. It's basically the same thing that happened a season ago, and it's what I've always thought would come to pass. I think we are on track to see that once again, and we'll get to play all these fun tiebreaker games about, well, you know, it's who's got the best record against the next highest seeded team, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. Like, it's just going to be somewhat chaotic is what I anticipate, but I'm also here for the chaos, like the Joker, an agent of chaos. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.